Genesis study, though in kind of reality it's like the first week. This last week was just an introductory class. Does everybody have a lesson 2? Need one?
We have this on.
Every time you say that, I think, yes, I turned it on. And every time I'm wrong. So this is lesson 2 that covers creation from Genesis 1:1 down to chapter 2 and verse 3. And so thank you again, all of you, for coming. Let's begin with a prayer. Our Father in heaven, thank you so very much for the good day you've given us today. We're thankful for opportunities like this that we can come together, open your word together and study. We pray, Father, that you'll help us to understand what's been left for us here and good ways for us to use it in our own lives as well as in sharing you and your word with others. This is so foundational to our faith and to our evangelistic efforts, and we just again pray that you'll be with us and help us. Be with those that are traveling, those who are unwell, and again we thank you for Jesus and all that he means to us, and it's in his name we pray. Amen. So the first question, and you may know this, you may not even have an idea what I was meaning by it, which is fine, we'll cover that. But I asked you to list the 5 major terms used in verse 1. Tim.
Beginning, God created the heavens and earth.
Right. So in the beginning, let me see if this is working on. So the first one is in the beginning, and the premise of this is if you're going to make or create or do anything, there's these 5 foundational principles that apply. They were first formulated and organized together by a guy by the name of Herbert Spencer, who lived in the late 19th century, died in like 1902. He was a philosopher, he was an anthropologist, and he was one of the leading evolutionists of his day. John Borelli has lesson sheets if you don't have one.
Do you need one?
And he was because of his anthropology and other things, he was very much leaning towards societal evolution. And in fact, he is the one that Darwin got the term survival of the fittest from. He's the one that coined it originally. And so he wrote a book called The Principles of Biology. And one of the chapters in that book had the chapter heading, and I'll just give you the chapter heading from his book: Space, Time, Matter, Motion, and Force. And it was hailed as great things, to put it all together. And then somebody came along and said, well, I see all of those in Genesis chapter 1, in verse 1. So in the beginning is time. God is the force. He's also the intelligence from our point of view. Created, the word created refers to actions that are being taken. The heavens would be space, and the earth would be matter. And so there they all are in the very first verse. Everything all the major things that you need to create or do or make something was already in there 1,500 years. Actually, 15 and 19 is 3,400 years before he wrote it down. So what do we learn from in the beginning? What does that mean, in the beginning?
There's a starting point
Of what?
of creation.
Yeah, the starting point of the creation. And who was there before? God was already there. He's already in existence there. And of course that's the statement in John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. All things were created through him, in verse 2. So we have in the beginning refers to the beginning of time, the beginning of creation. And God, the word for God here, what's the Hebrew word? Anybody know? Elohim, which is a plural noun. It's plural and singular. Like sheep. Thank you. I got to cow, and that didn't work because that's cattle, but sheep works for that. And it's very similar idea of more than one person existing as a unit. For instance, the husband and wife, the two will become one flesh. Okay, so two becoming one. Created, what's that mean?
Made.
It's more than made.
Made from scratch.
Yeah, well, it's bringing into existence. The Bible uses creation all through the scriptures as proof of God's existence. In fact, Paul's going to lean pretty heavily on that in Romans, the first chapter, in verse 20, that his divine power and deity are clearly seen by the things that are made. And then we have heavens. Why is it plural? We don't have the earths. We just have heavens, plural.
Well, mine doesn't say heavens,
Yours doesn't say heavens.
it says heaven.
Okay, well, that should say heavens because it's a plural word. Yeah, I know King James. I can always cut Cindy some slack on. That's not what my Bible says. It's like the woman who said that, the thing about faith is, it wasn't in her Bible because she ripped James 2 out of it. So, yes.
Is it for us, the atmosphere, where the rain and the clouds are, that's heavens above the earth. And then the other heaven is God's domain, where he has.
No, you're close though. So we have the heavens where the birds fly. Do birds fly any further? Do they not find? You do not find birds somewhere else? In space. So that's the second heaven. What we would look at is where the stars and planets and sun and all of those. There is a third heaven. Pardon me? That's where God lives. But that's not, he didn't create that. I mean, here, what he's creating here is physical. And so it's the heavens. It's the first and second heaven from the cultural point of view of mankind at that time. And then you have the earth, which is, yes?
I just want to make sure I understood what you said. So the first heaven's like the sky, the birds, and then the
The
second
clouds and the
like-
birds and stuff.
And then the second heaven's like space.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Just wanted to make sure I understood.
that heaven is the final frontier.
And then, got it.
Okay, just to use a common reference point for you. And the earth here refers to the matter that the earth consists of and is made of and was constituted. Because in all of these things, with the heavens and the earth, what is its state? According to verse 2. So it's without form and void. So and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So when it says he created the heavens and the earth, it's just that all the stuff is there for it to exist. It's formless, it's shapeless. It has no purpose yet, no assigned purpose yet. But it's all there, okay? Any questions on that first verse? Pretty important, heady stuff there that you can use. Okay, question 2. What popular teachings in the world are disproved in verse 1? And I've got my pen here, so as you give me some, I can mark them off.
Big Bang.
Pardon me?
Big Bang theory.
Okay, give me the more general term, evolution. Evolution, and how is that disproved in verse 1?
Creating.
It's God created it. Yeah. Jonathan, did you have? Randy?
There was a series out several years ago called One Strange Rock. I don't know if anybody saw that, but I watched one of the episodes when I was on travel, and some aspect of life on Earth, and the scientists at the end concluded, we're just lucky to be alive.
Yeah. Isn't it just amazing that everything just accidentally happened to come together?
We're lucky.
Yeah, we're lucky. Okay, anybody else have any popular, well-known, or teachings in the world that are disproven here?
Dan,
Yes.
pardon me, back in the first question, I didn't get number 5.
The earth.
Oh, I got Earth,
Do you have heavens?
yeah,
Do you have created?
yeah,
Do you have God?
no,
There. So you missed number 2. Okay? But I didn't think I could do that backwards, but I did. Yes, Tim.
That there is a beginning. I don't know what that'd be called.
The what?
That there is a beginning. Because I don't hear evolution really talk about, or that something came from nothing.
Okay. And they don't believe that. So what do they believe has always been here? Matter. That's materialism. And so that, and from Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, somebody was already there. So the only eternal thing from Genesis 1:1 is God. Matter was created. Okay? But that's, I know when we think of materialism, I remember when I first moved here, I was sitting up in my office, which was upstairs back here when we had an upstairs back there. And Howard Reagan, who was one of our elders, looked at me and he said, you know what you need to preach on more? And I said, what? He said, materialism. Can never preach too much on materialism. I mean, I think he would like me to do that once a month. Well, when we think of materialism, what do we think of? Money and wealth and acquiring things. And but materialism in a broader sense is that matter is eternal. Okay, so we got 2 of the 6 things that I have.
You kind of already mentioned it, but that there is a God.
Okay, so atheism is disproven. And then along with that, and I'll give you the 2 that go along with that. Pantheism, which is that God is in everything and everything is in God. Right? That's a Hindu teaching, that God is part of everything and everything is a part of Him. In fact, in Hinduism, I think that when you die, what do? You go back into this great mix of stuff. Okay? The other one is polytheism, of many gods, and we recognize the scriptures as one God. Okay? And then there's one other one that was very popular when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I'll just give it to you, is humanism. That at the top of the intelligence quotient of the universe, it's human beings. We're the top. Communism would be an adherent of that. Nothing is greater than the state. They're the top. Okay, those are my 6. I don't know if anybody else had another one that I didn't give. I'm not saying I'm giving you an exhaustive list here. Okay, question 3, which I thought was going to be a really short answer. In fact, I don't know how much space I left for you there in your sheets. How long was each day of creation?
1 day.
That's a really safe answer. Yeah, I have to give you that. You know, you might think about not being a lawyer or not being an electrician and being a lawyer or a congressman or something. When you say 1 day, what kind of a time reference are you looking at?
24 hours.
Okay.
Well, I put 24 hours once the moon and Earth was, once the moon was formed, because that would have created the cycle. But before that, which was day 4,
Right.
we didn't really have a 24 hours.
Right. Well, and if you'd asked me previously to me preparing this lesson, I'd have told you 24 hours. Because it says evening and morning was a day. And if you looked at my notes, I said, I am so sure now. And what I was meant to put in there is, I'm not so sure now. And listen, what I'm about to share with you is not at all colored by the idea of a young earth versus an old earth. Anybody know the difference? Have you heard those terms? Young earth and old earth? What is it? What have you heard, John? You're nodding.
You're talking about as far as the age of the earth?
Right.
Younger being 4,000 to 6,000 years,
Okay.
as opposed to older being billions?
Okay, yeah. And so people that don't think it's 24 hours try to make the days be eons or ages long. And I'm not into that. And part of the reason for that is, as we go through this, and you'll notice this, what state was everything created in? Full grown, mature, old. Okay, everything had fruit on it already. You know, somebody asks you which came first, the chicken or the egg, you can say the chicken did. Okay. So when God created the earth from all of this matter that was there in the universe, could he have created it old? Could he have created it so it looked like it had a full life and all the carbon and everything that, you know, they were trying to say is this, that, or the other had already dissipated? Sure. Could have created it exactly like that. When he created trees and they had fruit on them, did they just have one ring, or could he have created them with 30 rings, you know, to indicate they're 30 years old when actually they're just now created? So that the old earth, young earth on the basis of physical evidence doesn't affect me at all. If God wants to create something old, he certainly could. But the Hebrew word for day is yom, Y-O-M. And I've always been, and here's what moved me into this and caught my eye as I was studying this, is what does chapter 1, verse 26 say? Actually, yes, go ahead and read verse 27 too.
And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his image. In the image of God created him, male and female created he them.
Okay. So, and when did that happen in Genesis 1? Day 6. Now, when you go over to chapter 2, and we have the expansion of the creation of man, it's kind of exploded for us there, so we can get a little bit more of a clue about it. God had what did he have happen to man? Put him in the garden, et cetera, et cetera. Then in verse 18 he says what?
Not good that man should be alone.
Okay, so he recognizes that man is alone. He's been put in the garden to do all of that. He's been given directions about working and everything. So then what did God do in verse 19? He had all the animals go in front of Adam. I mean, were they stampeding by him, or did they? I mean, so every animal, every kind went by, and he named them. How much time is all of this taking? And then finally, man realizes, after seeing all of this parade of God's creatures, that there was nobody like him. And so then God caused a sleep to fall upon him, and, you know, woman is created. I've always had a hard time having that whole scenario in one day. Just from the not that God couldn't do it, just Adam couldn't do it. I mean, there's too much going on there. Now, Could God have stopped the sun like he did with Joshua? Yes. Could he make the day longer? Yes. But anyway, I'm just telling you, that was a lot to consider, to just be all encapsulated there in verse 26 of chapter 1. Also in chapter 2 and verse 5, it said, no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, no plant had yet sprung up, for the Lord had not sent rain on the ground, and there was no one to work the ground. So the word for shrub, I think, has the idea of a wild plant, just the stuff that's just out there growing. And a plant is a domesticated plant, like corn and etc. And why hadn't the shrubs grown? Why hadn't any shrubs appeared? No rain. Why hadn't any plants come up? No keeper, no tiller, no person who's sowing and doing all of that. And so you see God's solution for that is that we have clouds now, and we have a mist, and then we also have a person who's going to work there. And so that, again, seems to me to indicate more than 24 hours. So there's a couple of ways that can work, and God get his message across that he created things, he created them in this order, and evening and morning kind of a deal, is that there's an anthropomorphic language that's being used so that we can understand that it was created in a specific amount of time. Because we're going to read here that God came down, that God breathed, that God hovered, that God planted. I don't think that happened. I don't see God on his knees planting plants. But we understand where plants come from. And so when we get to the end, and it says when God rested, again, that's using language that we could relate to. Because look at all the work that he did, and so he ceased from that. It could also be analogous language, which says that it's kind of like an analogy of a day, but it's not exactly a day, but it's also not it's not dissimilar of a time period. So I want to take you to a couple passages. Let's go to Hosea chapter 6 and verse 2. All of these passages use the same word, yom. Let's see here, back there. The rest doesn't. I don't have any answers up there for you for this. So we did that. Oh, how long was each day? That's where we are. Thank you, though, for telling me that. Who has Hosea 6:2? Okay, David.
After 2 days he will revive us. On the third day he will raise us up, that we may live in his sight.
Okay. So, as you look through this, he's talking about them being taken captivity and being brought back. Did that happen in 3 days? No, but he uses 3 days. He uses a specific time frame. Let's go back to Isaiah chapter 2. Now, Hosea becomes important because people say that every time you see yom with an ordinal, is that the word for just a number? When ordinal, it always means 24 hours. Well, it doesn't mean that in Hosea. Okay? Now, I'm not going to have you read this whole text. If you want to write it down, is Isaiah 2, verse 12, down through verse 22. But verse 12 says, the Lord Almighty has a day in store for all the proud and lofty, for all that is exalted. He has a yom in store. And then you see, what's happening to the towers and trading ships, and they're going to flee to the caves. And in that day, people will throw away to the moles and bats their idols of silver and gold. They're going to flee to the caverns. And again, it's not a 24-hour period. So I think there's some times when it does mean 24 hours, and I think the context would determine that. And the reason I'm just sharing this is because I'm still thinking about this now, and I just wanted to let you think about it. I I don't think he's wanting us to automatically think eons and ages when he says days. But I also think he doesn't mean for us to automatically think 24 hours. That it's just a time period. You know, some people say, well, 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 8 says, a day is with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. That has no application here. That's basically just another way of saying God's timeless. Okay, Mike?
One of the things that was more, I think, focusing on me is Exodus 20, in verse 11, for in 6 days, Lord made heaven, the earth, and the sea, and all in them, rested on the seventh day. So it seems to me that the periods of time, in that when he's comparing these 6
Right.
to this 6, and
Right.
we know that that seventh day
Right.
seemed to be a 24-hour period. So that the biggest thing that I have is that most people that I talk to in this, they believe we have to see this because science has proved this other way, and therefore God can't, or these ones can't be literal.
Right.
And I'm going, well, I still think they can be literal. We
Right.
don't have to go that. I know there are some interesting arguments for
Right.
it. Look at all of them
Right.
I can find, and yet we don't have to believe that it wasn't 7 days.
Right.
Some are saying you have to because
Right.
it's all
And listen, it may be 6 literal days. I'm just feeling a little bit freer to say, but I don't know for sure. And I even called Daniel Reeves, who works in this whole region, and I said, what do people that you work with there, what's their opinion on this? He said, well, I have some of the most conservative people working here, and they disagree on whether it's 24 hours or used in another type of way. And I just don't want us to find ourselves backed into a corner. Can I believe that God could do all of this in 24 hours? Absolutely. In whatever way he wanted to do it. In fact, it says evening and morning, and God could have separated an evening and a morning as far as he wants. But I just wanted to not have that you would say, well, it's got to be this way, and if you don't believe this, then you're lost, that kind of a thing. Roger, and then Jonathan.
We read in the Bible that in Genesis 4:4, but when the fullness of time had come, he sent forth his son. Could that not be the same thing? God had already purposed salvation. He probably, in my opinion, had already knew what he was going to do for
Right.
creation. And in that fullness of time, whatever time it took to do man, whatever time it took to do animals, so on and so
Right.
forth. So we don't have a record of it.
Right.
We have a stopwatch.
Right. And you meant Galatians 4:4, not Genesis 4:4.
Oh, Galatians, I did.
Yeah.
Both of them started with a G.
Yeah, they do. Trying to think, is there another G book in the Bible? I think there is. Go ahead.
I mean, you alluded to it just a minute ago, but twice. When God held the sun up in the sky, for Joshua, was that day 24 hours?
Right.
Or was it longer because the sun stopped
Right.
and then resumed its course?
Right.
So I agree with you in your hesitance to say 24 hours because that's kind of an arbitrary, that's what we're familiar with. I mean, maybe the earth moved differently around the sun
Right.
before the flood. Maybe.
Well, let me add this to because I wish I could remember what you just said, because you said that it
Arbitrary?
had to be 24 hours, or arbitrarily say it had to be 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that. Again, I'm not demanding it be 24 hours.
Oh, no, I know, but we tend to think
Yes.
if it's one day, then it has to be 24
Right,
hours.
right.
But we can have it be evening and morning, and
Right, right,
in the span of things, I think something is being communicated
Right,
by God.
right.
That's that these were distinct time
right.
periods.
And I think as well that we have, when we get to the days of creation, what was created, that there's a pattern there, and everything within that time period, that day, whether it's 24 hours or a little longer, everything that of that nature was created in that period. Don?
Kind of like you, the jury's still kind of, for me, the jury's still kind of out on the 24. I don't have a problem with it being 24 hours because there are so many things, and you're probably going to end up going over them. There are so many places in the book of Genesis where tens of thousands of years could have spanned. Sometimes we think of Adam and Eve being in the garden for a couple of weeks, and then we're kicked out. How long were they gonna go?
Yeah, I don't know.
How long did it take for Adam to name all of the animals?
Right.
How long did it take to build the Tower of Babel?
Right.
How long did it take for Cain to build the city in the land of Nod?
Right.
You know, things like that, there are gaps,
Right.
huge gaps
Right.
in time
Right.
that to be accounted for.
I guess, and again, I had that word in my head and it just went out. Dogmatic. I just don't want us to have to be dogmatic about the fact that it's 24 hours. It may very well be, but you don't have to feel like you're tied to that. Mike?
The sun wasn't done until day 4. So again, our definition
Right.
of today is this revolution where the sun comes.
Right.
The sun wasn't there until day 4.
Right.
So how could we have known how long it's some time period?
Right.
In the same way, the biggest one that I have though is the opposite. When the other side comes and says, you must believe
Right.
these long ones, because that's just a bunch of myths and fairy tales that you couldn't understand in
Right.
any way.
Right.
Or it could be that it was what God said in a literal sense. And so I'm trying to keep it to be not dogmatic on
Right.
either side.
Right. Okay, good. Okay, so question 4, what was created on each day and what is its significance? And so prior to day 1, what was created? The heavens and the earth. So again, how much time was there between that, the creation of all of this stuff, before it was, and the Spirit is hovering there, and I don't know. I just don't think, because we have a new kind of in verse 3 of chapter 1, let me get over here, where it says, and God said. And so now we're beginning the rest of the creation, what we would call the creation week. And so before that, God created the heavens and the earth. What are we told about it? It's formless. That means it has no shape. It's void, which means that it contained nothing. There was no life there. And it was also dark, so there's no light. There was a deep, and there was waters, a solution here of something that had no shape and no life in it. And the Spirit is hovering over the waters. We're not told what he did in doing that, just the fact that he's doing that. So day 1 is in verses 3 through 5, and what's the main thing here?
Light.
Okay, so he created light. And how did he do that? He spoke it into existence. Let there be light. And what is light at its, I should ask Luca this because he's the scientist among us. What is light as in its basic form? Yeah, it's energy. It's some sort of energy. And it's necessary. You have to have it for life to exist. And the interesting thing here is it says that the light was what? Separated from the darkness. So we had darkness, and the light was created, and it was separated from the darkness. And he called the light day, and he called the dark night. How did God do that? I haven't got a clue. Because the sun, moon, and stars haven't been created yet. And so people have a problem with that. Well, what if I said that he created the sun, moon, and the stars, and then 3 days later he created light? How would you respond to that? You know, it's 6 of one and half a dozen another for problems. Okay, but if it said God created it, okay, and I don't have to know how he did it. I know that 3 days later, on the 4th day, he's going to create the planets and stars and stuff. Yes.
God is light, and so therefore I can see him being able to create a light.
Right.
Because that concept, he's the energy from which all the causes of the
Right.
things.
But that was already there, if he's light, but then he brought it into the physical creation here. Day 2, verses 6 through 8. What did God create? The firmament. Does anybody else have a different word than firmament? John?
Expanse.
Expanse. Anybody else have a different word? Who said it? Vault. A vault. And that's what the NIV has. He created a vault. And it means expanse, and it means something that's spreading out or spreads out. And this was called, it says that he created the vault, made the vault, mine says, and separated the water under the vault from the water above it, and it was so. And he called in verse 8, what did he call the vault? What did he call the firmament or the expanse? Heaven. Mine says sky. Okay? So, I'm guessing at this point here, it's atmosphere. It's the first heaven that we would be looking at here. Because you have water above, which would be what? Clouds, a canopy of a mist of sorts, and the water below, the oceans, the seas there. And again, whatever it means, God spoke it into existence. Okay, day 3. Created what? The land or dry ground. How do you do that?
He spoke it.
Well, yes.
Oh, he formed it in the middle of the waters. I'm not trying to ridiculous.
No, I know you're not. No, it says that he gathered the seas together and called the dry ground. So where the seas were moved and the dry ground appeared. Okay? And so he did that. He created the ground by gathering the waters together in one place. And the waters in one place he called seas. And the dry ground he called land. Land. Don't you wish all of your tests were this easy? And all of the seas have a common bed. In fact, all the seas are at what level?
Sea level.
Thank you. Sea level. It's all sea level. Okay? And everything above sea level is land. Okay? So he doesn't have in mind here lakes and rivers and streams. He's talking about the main body of water that covers the earth. So now that we have land, what did he create? Vegetation. And how did they come forth? What did they look like when they came forth?
Fully mature,
Okay, so the grass had
yielding seed.
seeds in it. The trees had fruit. They're already there, and it's seed and fruit according to its kind. Okay. Jesus said, I'll just turn there real quick. Matthew chapter 7 and verses 16 and 17. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but every bad tree bears bad fruit. And so they have their own kinds. They have their own fruit that comes from that, and that's fundamental. What does evolution say happened? It all evolved. Well, you got a plant, and it became this. It went down this line and became a pear, and this line became a watermelon. And over here, it became cheat grass. Whatever it was. And listen, and I'm not trying to be funny here, but that would be like maybe false teaching could actually produce salvation. Okay? The fruit, by your fruit you'll know. That's what Jesus just said there. And again, living plants were created full grown. So day 4, verses 14 through 19.
Sun and moon and stars galore.
There you go. And previously, they were there, but they were formless and void and without shape and without purpose. And now what's the purpose of these planets and moon and stars and sun?
For signs and seasons.
Okay, yeah, well, first of all, they rule. They rule over the day and the night. They govern over the light. And they give light in both spheres of day and night. And they also serve, as somebody just said, for signs. Signs for seasons. And my translation, I think it says, I'll look at it in here. For sacred times. Not just seasons, but for sacred times. So, go ahead, Tim.
All that vegetation that was created the day before, with, photosynthesis, and the light and everything like that. But then also now we're gonna have seasons to affect all of that. It's just interesting how all that
Yes?
takes place.
Yeah. So, how long is a month? In God's timetable. So the full cycle of the moon, which is how long?
28.
28 days. 28 plus a little bit. So that's why the Hebrew calendar has 13 months every once in a while. And then we have how many seasons? 4 seasons. And as the Earth is going around the sun in its revolution, the sun appears to be going north and south. Okay, when it's right in the middle, what is that? Equinox. And we have 2 of those. We have them in the summer and we have it in the winter. And then as it goes south, and then as it goes north, it went as far south as it's going to go. It's already starting back. But when it gets to the end of that cycle, what do we call that? Oh, good, because I just found this out. I just looked this up and found this out this last month.
Equinox is called spring.
It's a solstice. What's the? No, it's the summer solstice and the winter solstice. Sol means what? Sun. Stis. Stop. So the sun appears to go south until December 21st or 22nd, and then the sun stops, or appears to, and then it heads back north, and then on June 21st, it stops and starts going back the other direction. Those are the solstices. That gives us the 4 seasons, all created because the earth is tipped on its axis. Okay? How lucky are we, Randy, that the earth is tipped on an axis? And so, as the earth goes around the sun, we have that. Then we also have holy days, sacred days that are directed by that. The position of the of the heavenly bodies have also determined how to measure time, and also with reference to the sun and the moon. Passover coincides with what? Passover, the sacred time, the Passover, how do they determine that? Let me ask you this, is Easter the same day or the same even month sometimes? No.
Sun crosses the vernally.
It's tied to, Passover is the first full moon following the spring equinox. Okay? So that sacred day is, because that changes because it's not exactly 365 days and not exactly 12 months. Yes, Tim?
Another thing he's doing when he's creating the sun and moon and placing them is like, okay, let's make it so that when they get in front of each other, it's perfectly aligned such that the size, you don't see the sun. It can be totally blocked.
Yeah, an equinox. I mean, an eclipse.
Eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then you have the moon that causes tides, which actually washes, keeps the water stirred up so it doesn't get stagnant. I've just got 2 more here real quick. And then we have days, which are determined by what? The rotation of the earth as it's revolving around the sun. And that's about 24 hours, okay? And then you have years, which are 365 plus of those days. All of that is determined by the planets and the sun and the stars and the moon. All right. What'd somebody say?
Galore, you know.
Oh, galore. Yes. Look at me. I didn't finish this lesson. I'm already having to borrow time. I'm in debt to myself. All right, so we will start with day 5 next week, which will be the 21st. And I will have the next lesson out for you with Zoom on lesson 3. Tim, go ahead.
Which just reminds me, there's one other thing that, with all these numbers of the days and everything, that's not aligned with the planets, and that is the 7 days. That's totally unique. The only place we get that is from the Bible.
Right.
From this
Right.
here.
Right. Yeah, well, 7 does go into 28. Exactly, right. It's a fourth of a lunar cycle. But yeah, there's not much. Yes?
Another thing that I found interesting is the Earth is actually closest to the sun in January. It's just because the Earth is tilted, the northern hemisphere above the equator is tilted away from the sun at that point. That's why so much more of the land masses south of the equator are so much more arid.
Right. Well, and if you're in Misako or the Vlastelicas, South America, they're roasting down there. They're so close to the sun, I guess. So, Robin had a Roman history teacher, or was it physical geography? Physical geography teacher that put a map of the world up, one of those ones, where you can see the whole, it's all tilted out. And he took his marker and he said, here's India, and here's Africa, and here's South America. And everywhere it just seems like all these continents go down like this at the south. He said, you know why that's that way? It's called continental drip. Okay, I just thought I'd leave you with a smile.